Carlton King is a former Scotland Yard Special Branch and MI6 officer and the author of Black Ops.
I was undercover for Special Branch in a jihadi organisation.
If you'd like to help Carlton keep producing the Black Spy podcast and receive episodes and information that's only available to Carlton's special Patreon agents, then you can donate as little as £3, €4 or $5 a month by signing up with Patreon. See the Black Spy podcast notes or Google Patreon Black Spy podcast and pledge your monthly amount. You can even win the opportunity to be a guest on the show. Thanks for listening. And don't forget to subscribe for free.
My name is Carlton King, and welcome to the Black Spy podcast, the show which shines a light on the world of secret intelligence, national security, and armed governmental personal protection operations, and where they mix together or come together with the geopolitical world. So in order to do this, what I do is I bring on guests and we then basically have a sit down and we discuss issues about what the world's like, why they need to know about the secret world and how it affects them, and just where the synergies are. So today I've got a great person. She is, let us just say, bubbly, and hopefully will explain to you about the world of narcotics and or drugs and how that works with people who unfortunately get themselves addicted and how the state deals with that issue. Why are we on the drugs issue when my game was more related to national security and secret intelligence? Well, the truth of the matter is because drugs has been used by 101 different organisations in order to fund their terrorist activities, their subversive activities, their intelligence activities. So in a sense, it is part and parcel of the secret world. Jill, let me ask you to introduce yourself.
Well, my name's Jill and I've been working with addiction for over 20 years now. And I retired about 5 years ago because, to be quite honest, I didn't see it improving. It was actually getting worse than when I started 20 years ago. So that was why I stopped.
So when you say getting worse, what do you mean? The addiction was getting worse or how it was dealt with was getting worse?
Both. The government's view of addiction is to float it. They don't actually do anything for recovery as such. They just give people another addictive substance to stop them buying heroin. So they will give them methadone or Subutex. Methadone is a liquid which actually is worse to come off than heroin.
Right.
It actually causes a higher addiction level and it's actually worse to come off. A lot of street addicts will say it gets into your bones. That's how they feel. It actually penetrates their bones. Heroin you will actually blow clear of within 12 to 24 hours. Methadone takes a lot longer. It's very sticky substance. It's high in sugar, so it feels sticky. It's not a nice substance to take. And Subutex is a blocker. So basically, if someone is on Subutex, they'll take a pill every day, and then they will, if they take heroin, the heroin will not work. The neurons in the brain will not allow the heroin to work. So it's a waste of a fix, really.
All right. So what you're saying is that the warm, fuzzy glow, whatever they get from taking heroin, when you take Subutex, is prevented.
Yes, they just become sick.
Right. Interesting. So why is that not used more often then?
A lot of addicts don't like it. They still want the feeling of a buzz, or they still want that feeling of wellness. They want to feel well. Subutex, people that take Subutex are quite strong-minded. They really want to come the other side of their addiction. So they probably are really keen to join with AA, NA, other groups, and they're really dedicated to their recovery. So they will use Subutex. And sometimes it's just they need that comfort blanket. They need to know they're taking something that will prevent, if they do relapse, it will prevent it working.
So already, Jill, I can see here that what you're saying to me is you kind of think, I don't want to put words in your mouth as normal, you kind of think there's two types of people. There's one who are those who really want to get off drugs, and there's the others who may even be, because I had a doctor on some weeks ago, who may even be utilising the other methodologies for supposedly getting people off drugs as just another fix.
Yes.
Is that about right?
I mean, there are two brands of people. The people that like taking drugs,
Right, okay.
and we have to accept that. I mean, they just like it. It doesn't matter what you say to them, what you do with them. They just like taking drugs. Like we like watching the TV, reading a book, going driving in a car. They like taking drugs.
Yeah.
It's as simple as that. There are the other side of the case where there are people that take drugs to self-medicate from whatever trauma they've had in their life, because that trauma's never been dealt with.
Yes.
And there's some people that have slipped through the crack. They're going to the care system, so they've had a rough life at the beginning. They've gone into the care system. They don't know how to live. They don't know how to be part of a community because they've never actually been part of a community. They're never held responsible for themselves. They just sort of float through life. They never, for instance, they don't know how to shop, how to cook, how to budget. They don't know how to do anything because they've never been taught. So you're asking people that had an addiction that are, when they're in the height of their addiction in a very chaotic, drama-filled world, which some people like.
Yeah,
they love it. Yeah, they love it.
Looking for little opportunities.
That's it. It's a full-time job.
Yeah.
It's a full-time job being an addict. You don't go into it thinking it's going to be part-time because it really isn't. It's full-time, head-on work to be an addict. But they like it. And there's other people that do it because they can't see a way out and they're scared to look at the trauma and how they're scared to go relive that trauma to come through the other side.
So there's two things I want to ask you from that, because are there not those who take drugs to get a buzz? Let's say members of our government, who take drugs to get a little bit of a buzz, but can control it, or we're told they can, you know. There's a whole plethora of them when they went to be leaders. I'm not saying anything that's wrong. Leader of the Tory party, whole plethora of them put their hands up and said, "Yeah, we've taken cocaine." Right? So these guys' argument is that, oh yes, when I was a student at Oxford, I took cocaine, but I was totally in control of it. Right? So is that true, or is it, in your opinion, or is it more a matter of we maybe have got the money to control it? So we don't need to go out and commit crimes because we've got money to get our drugs in another way? Or are they actually telling the truth? You know, I can take this cocaine and I can leave this cocaine. It doesn't attack me.
The way I look at it is, if you take a Class A drug more than once, it's got control of you because you like it.
Okay.
So if you take it once and you never take it again, that Class A drug has no control over you. If you take cocaine once and then you take it 2, 3, it might have periods in between it, but you've still gone back to it. And that line between taking something once in a while and becoming an addiction is very thin.
So it's like a smoker.
It's so thin. So when you look at the people, they might take it 1 week and then it might be a couple of months before they take it again. But they do take it again, then it could be another couple of months. But then when you look at it overall, the time parameters become really thin. So then they're taking it every couple of days. Then they're taking it every day. Then they're taking it every couple of hours. But if you take it a second time, you have a partial to that addiction because you like what it does.
So are you telling me, in a sense, I can best put it with cigarettes? I mean, I've never taken a drug in my life. I've never smoked in my life. And at one stage, I never had a drink in my life. That was a kung fu man. Anyway, that's by the by. But if you say to me smoking, which I can see and I have seen and understood very, very well, you can see individuals and say, I packed in smoking for 3 months. I packed in smoking for 6 months. I packed in smoking for a year. And then next minute on 60 cigarettes a day again.
But they're still a smoker.
Correct. They're still on it. It's
They're
still got them.
even if they've
It's still got
stopped,
them.
they're still a smoker. It's like with alcohol. If you're an alcoholic and you go through the AA process, you're still an alcoholic. Just because you don't drink.
Correct.
The thing is, you don't drink because you become an alcoholic.
Because if you touch it, you know
You're going to go backwards.
Yeah.
So you're still that person. You're still that person with that addiction. You're just not using that day.
Yes.
And that's a massive difference. So people that say that they're in control of addiction are, in my eyes, naive, because the addiction can overtake really quickly, because they might start off with the back of the hand snort. The next thing, they're doing a line, which is a bigger amount. And then the next thing, they're doing 2 lines. That the periods in between might be the same, but it's the amount they're taking.
Because their body's got used to the first element.
You will
of it,
never
and you
get
track
the
the same
first
time.
burst.
Yeah.
Whatever you do in life, the first time you do it is the highest element you will ever achieve.
Correct.
So whatever comes after that, you're chasing that, but you'll never get it.
Yeah.
And that's when your addiction increases.
Unless, of course, maybe you jump onto different drugs.
Well, again, you're going
Which
from...
give you that better...
Not really, because
What?
you're going from an amphetamine, cocaine is an upper, and then you're going to heroin, which is a downer.
Right, okay.
So it depends what you like. So if you want to be up, you take cocaine, crack, and if you want to be down, you take heroin.
Right.
And then you go into then what they call a snowball, which is an injection of heroin and crack.
Yeah.
So they get the up and down both in the same.
Yeah.
So it's what the person likes.
Yeah.
So obviously these people that were in government and they probably will say, well, we needed it because we were working 36 hours on the trot and we needed to stay awake and all this. Well, really, why didn't you just go to bed?
Yeah,
why didn't you just go to
partying.
bed? Or why didn't you just, take a rest, have a cat nap, have a power nap? That might be your excuse, and that's what you need to. If that's what you need to tell yourself, that's okay. That's what you need to tell yourself. But when we're looking at it, it's not really, is it?
So, actually, first and foremost, I was just going to ask you a question. But first and foremost, I think what I should do is ask you to explain a little bit more about your activities in the drug world, because I think people need to understand the depth of your knowledge. So can I ask you to say a little bit more?
When I first started this, a long time ago now, a member of my family was addicted, and we approached what was then the community drug team for help, and there was no help for families that were concerned about loved ones with addiction. So I started doing my own homework, and then you never become a drugs worker because that's what you want. I always think drugs workers happen. They happen from a chain of events in your life. You fall into it. You never grow up thinking, I'm going to be a drugs worker. You don't hear a 10-year-old say, I'm going to be a drugs worker when I grow up. It's one of those jobs that you sort of fall into by accident. It's not a vocation at the beginning. It's just a chain of events that get you to that stage. And my chain of events was A, this member of my family that we couldn't get help for, and B, my best friend had HIV. And at the time, this was in the early 90s, and he was treated appallingly still. He had HIV that then went to AIDS, and he was treated appallingly, so badly. It was just a constant fight with the hospital and everything. So they took away our quality time that we had with him, because we were just constantly fighting for them just to give him dignity and respect. I mean, once I got to the hospital, me and his partner, and we got there, and the doctor was standing in the doorway giving him his terminal diagnosis because he wouldn't go in the room. So it was things like that. We used to have to change his bed and feed him and bath him and everything because the nurses wouldn't do it.
Because of fear?
Fear, yeah. And so that then, he said to me, before he died, he says, I want you to promise me that you'll go and do something with what was then the Terence Higgins Trust.
Yes, okay, familiar with it, yeah.
And I said, okay. Never done anything about it. You make these promises to people and you go, I will do that, we'll never get around to it. So, but anyway, there was an advert that they were looking for volunteers. So they said to me, went to the induction day, and they said, do you want to become a buddy? And I said, oh no, lived that, done that, I couldn't cope with that again.
When did you become
a buddy? So somebody that's in terminal illness,
yes, got you. Yeah.
you become a buddy. And I said, no, I don't think I could cope with that again. Been there, done that, and it is too hard. And they said, well, we do this other programme as well. And at the time it's called Swish, and it was based in Coventry, and it's sex workers into safe sex, sexual health. So I started working, I was a volunteer and worked with sex workers in Coventry, and we used to go around in a van at night, giving them tea and coffee and biscuits and condoms and stuff, needles and everything to promote safe injecting and things. And that's how my life as a drug worker started.
Right. So via women's health in a kind of way.
Sex workers, working with circus, yeah.
To the... And this is another question. What percentage would you say, from your experience, of sex workers are also taking narcotics?
You tend to find the sex workers that are on narcotics are street workers.
Exactly, yeah.
So I've worked with both sides. I've worked with women that work in brothels that see it as their job.
Yes.
That is, they get up in the morning, they take their kids to school, they go home, they clean their house like we would, and they go to work.
They make good money.
Make their money. I've sat in some of the most bizarre situations where they've sat in latex and God knows what else, and we're working out what they could put on their tax form. What they could class as an expense or not. You know, if you want bizarre scenarios, it's one of the most bizarre I've ever done. They pay their tax, they pay their VAT.
Jobs are good.
They're legal in every respect, apart from obviously sex work is not legal, but in every other respect they're legal. It tends to be women that are on the street, that are working off the street, tend to be the ones that are drug users.
Because they need to pay for the habit.
Well, they have to pay for the habit, and the houses, the brothels won't have them. They won't have them in because they're classed what they would see as dirty.
So let me get this right, because what you often get in some of the... I was going to say propaganda, but that's too strong a word. In some of the orientated anti-sex worker choice, free choice perspective, often from some elements of women's rights, you get nobody wants to be a sex worker. You get that perspective. No, you get that perspective.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
From maybe middle class women who have a perspective of what women should be. Yeah. You get that, and so nobody wants to be. So that they say, and they all end up on drugs. Actually, from my experience looking at it, from when I lived in Germany, or from other countries, and I've worked in 3/4 of the countries of the world, what you probably see is that actually the person's a drug person first, and then goes to the street to pay for the drugs.
Yes, it tends to be.
That would be my perspective.
A lot of the time, people, you've heard he's my boyfriend speech.
I was going to say
and
that.
He loves me.
Yeah.
You get that speech, and what happens is you'll get a vulnerable girl or woman that's probably dibble-dabbled with drugs through her life. She's come from a chaotic background, and she's met a bloke, and she thinks he's the stability of her life and the love of her life. He feeds it into all her vulnerabilities, sees what makes her happy, does that, but then she's got to repay that back.
I'll tell you how I've seen it even worse than that. I've seen it where the man is a drug man. He's a druggie, to put that word that way. I don't want to put it in a negative context always, but he's a drug taker, enjoys it. And this guy was a nice guy in many ways. Went out with a girl who had nothing to do with drugs, nothing to do with sex working. But, you know, and...
But if you love me, you'll do it. Was she that vulnerable?
She probably wasn't even that vulnerable. But fell in love. This guy's whole emphasis was to get her on the street.
Yep.
In Germany, not the street. It's into the Crazy Sexy or the brothel, which is there, to pay for his drugs.
But if you love me, you'll do it.
Correct. So she goes in the Crazy Sexy, not a drug taker to start off with, getting the money, which is easy money she perceives, but it isn't, right? But it's quick money, it's big money. Getting the money, paying him, he's injecting drugs, heroin, and then that fateful time comes. Well, if he's doing it and I'm paying for it effectively, because he ain't working, is he? He's just, as you say, looking at his little scheme. His eyes are all lit up. What scheme can I get to make me money? She thinks, oh, they're cracking it as well. And that's it. Finished.
Yeah.
She's now down the drain doing the same sort of thing. So it was, he led her down that drain, towards the narcotic, but she didn't do it because of the narcotic. She was doing it for him.
Well, I've had a client...
Does that happen often? That's what I was going to ask you.
I've had a client that was sexually abused by members of her family all her life,
right.
And her brothers pimped her out. So she had 3 brothers that she would have to supply before she even got to hers.
Oh.
So she was 4th in the pecking line. So you can imagine how hard she had to work.
You're not wrong.
So yeah, she was 4th in the pecking order. She had to sort them out before she could even consider herself. And I mean, you know, well, rest of her soul, she's dead now. But yeah, it was just horrific. It was horrific. It was just, you can't imagine that your brother, because she'd come out black eyes and all sorts, and I'd say, I look at her and she'd just say, oh, I didn't earn enough last night. So this was her brother.
That's interesting. Now we come into an interesting area. Was the brother like that anyway, or did the drug turn the brother to be like that? You know, it's one of these questions.
Yeah.
Are people that way?
I think if you've got that in you, it will continue whether you have the drug or not.
Bring it out of you.
If you are that ruthless, there has to be a ruthless streak in you.
That's what I'm
but
thinking.
the drug will fuel that.
Yes.
But there has to be a ruthless streak in you to be able to contemplate that that's an acceptable behaviour. But then you look at it and think, well, where did he learn that?
Yeah, absolutely.
You know,
absolutely.
I only knew him in his adult life. I didn't know him in his childhood. But then you think, well, where did he learn that? To think that that was an acceptable way to carry on, to treat his sister in that manner.
Well, to treat any woman like that, or any person like that. I mean, you know, well, I was going to say he's not pimping himself out, but actually, some of them do pimp themselves out, the blokes, because they want to make money as well, you know.
It's very rare. I mean, my argument with pimps, I've had this many a time, and I sit and when they're trying to convince me, you know, how good they are to their girlfriend, as you know, they're making them walk the streets in the freezing cold.
Exactly.
And I'll say, well, why don't you do it?
You do it, exactly.
If it's that easy and it's that acceptable,
why don't you do it?
You'll learn, because a man will actually earn more money.
Yeah.
A man will actually earn more money on the street than a woman.
Yes, absolutely.
So I said, you do it then. If it's that acceptable.
That's interesting. Let me just ask that, sorry to cut you floor, but are these pimps, often the ones you're looking at, are they actually drug takers themselves? Or are many not? Some are and some aren't. Right, okay, so it's
a mixed bag, yeah. You tend to find that there's some couples that get together because of the addiction.
Yes.
So they help each other out, so to speak.
Yes.
So he might be a shoplifter or whatever, but she's sex work. So he goes throughout the day to earn money to float them through the day, and then she goes out at night to earn money to float them through the night.
Frightening, isn't it?
Yeah. So then you've got that dynamic. But then you've got others that pimp women because they like the money.
Yeah.
And they will, you know, it's a business to them.
Yes.
It pays for their nice car, it pays for their everything. And these women then delude themselves to think that they're actually this person's girlfriend. But he might have 5 of them.
Yes, of course.
He might have
he's got more money, mate.
Yeah, so he might have 5 women working. So it's, again, you know, we've had some horrific cases, you know, where there was a woman that had got herself sort of semi-clean, left the city, went somewhere else, came back, felt too confident within herself, came back to the city and got embroiled in that world again.
With the same guys or different type of guys, but the same? The
actual brother of the original guy. And he, to degrade her and put her what he called in line, made her sit in a dog bed naked, and every man that walked through the door she would give them oral sex, and that went on for weeks. So and that's to break her.
Is he keeping her there? Can she move, or does she get beaten if she moves?
She gets beaten.
So there's a violent element to this as well.
Massively.
So this is not
she's locked in a flat.
This is violence. This is you.
She's just in the corner, in a dog bed.
Like a dog, basically.
Yeah, and basically the world is going around her, even within this flat.
Yeah.
And that's to show her that's how much control he has over her.
Yeah. Well, the violence has got the control.
Yeah.
The violence.
Well, the fear of violence. I always think the fear of violence is worse than the violence.
Right.
People have always said to me they'd rather be hit than live through it.
Than the fear of it.
The fear of it.
Yeah.
The fear is worse than the hit.
So what do you do when you see that? When you're seeing stuff like that, what are you doing to prevent that? Are you going to the police? Are you policing that process?
All you can do is monitor it, and all you can do is offer the help. That person, because that's part of the recovery. And in my view, I mean, a lot of drug workers have completely different views on things. I have a very different way of working, and when I go, I used to say to I work very differently.
Okay.
I'm not.
Give me an explanation, because people don't understand.
I'm not fluffy. I'm not fluffy, and I'm not.
Can I ask you percentage? So, if you're talking fluffy, and can you explain what fluffy is to people? Would you give me the percentage for fluffy and the percentage for people like you?
Oh, there's not many people, not me. You'd have to ask my colleagues about that. I mean,
you know what fluffy is.
Yeah,
and you know.
I think every drugs team needs to have different dynamics.
Yes.
Because it's obviously you're working with different people. I'm very matter of fact.
Okay.
You're not doing me any favours coming here. At the end of the day, we're here to work together. You don't have to like me. We just have to get this done for you.
Yeah.
So, but there's some people that go into drug work that want to be liked, and they think that's what needs to happen.
And that's the biggest percentage?
Yeah. Because at the end of the a lot of people that go into drug work, they sort of think, oh, I'm going to save the world. I'm going to get on this white horse, and I'm going to save the world.
So they would basically be thinking they're a social worker.
Worse. They're the Messiah.
Right.
They're the Messiah.
Right.
They're going to fix everything.
Right.
They're going to walk out, and they're going to be, we're going to fix this. And what you're going to remember, if you're working with drug addicts, they know when they can manipulate someone, they can rinse someone. They know. And so you get people, that I'm quite hard in the way I work.
Yes.
I make boundaries, and these are my rules, and if you don't want to follow, that's fine.
So what happens if they don't follow?
Bye-bye.
Just not on your programme. Finished.
Because to me, if they're coming to me to work with me, we have a mutual respect for each other. I'm not asking them to like me. I'm asking them to have a mutual respect.
Yes.
And if they can't conduct themselves in that manner, how are they going to conduct themselves in the community?
Yes.
There has to be structure. They have to know what they're doing is wrong, and they have to learn to reintegrate into society.
Right.
So if I'm not promoting that, who is?
Yeah.
So I expect them to be at a clinic at a certain time, and I expect them to do what they're supposed to do. And if they don't want to do it, that's okay. I'm not chasing you. But I've known drug workers to drive miles and miles and go out looking for people.
Yeah.
I don't look for people.
Right.
You come to where I am, and then we will work together.
Yeah.
But don't come in shouting, don't come in screaming, no.
It's quite interesting, because you know what that kind of reminds me of? It reminds me of, you probably have heard of it, the Black Panther Party for Self-Defence. Have you heard of that? The self-defence bit people never put on the end, but that's what the actual title is.
Yeah.
The Black Panther Party for Self-Defence. And the fella who created that, the two guys, Bobby Seale, basically he said, I was dealing with the brothers on the block. So he's a revolutionary.
Yeah.
He's a communist revolutionary. That's what he is. But what he realises is, if you start teaching Marx and Engels and how that functions from that society, it ain't going to work in this society. So what you want to teach people is what works in this society from the brothers on the blocks.
Yeah.
Right? And the first thing you need to teach the brother on the block is discipline. And that got me, as soon as you said that, was that. So what they taught them was discipline.
Yeah.
Because what they didn't have on the block was discipline in a way that's measurable. They had discipline in the fact that they knew the street. We're working the street, we know what's going on. I can get myself killed out here on the street if I don't function properly. It's in the States. But the discipline of, I get up in the morning at 8 o'clock to do this, and at 10 o'clock I'm doing this type of work, and at 11 they didn't have that discipline.
Well, it's structure.
Structure.
As a human
Exactly.
being,
Structure.
every human being needs structure. They need some form of structure. You know, you bounce from day to day and it causes chaos within yourself and it causes chaos around your life. You have to have some structure. Even if that's just, I get up in the morning, I have a cigarette and I have a cup of tea. That, in a sense, is structure.
Sure.
Yeah. So if you don't have structure and a definition of structure, you're going to be chaotic because you're just bouncing off the walls.
Yeah.
But they knew that when they knocked the door to come into the office to come and see me, there was going to be structure.
Yes.
And there was going to be accountability. If they missed a clinic, I was very lucky that the prescribing doctor that I had was very on board. He was a military man and he was very on board with it. It was structured. If you miss it, you're going off script. It's simple as that.
Oh, sorry, explain what off script
Right,
means.
off prescription is methadone is a prescription drug. So what would happen is, I used to work predominantly with homeless people. So we used to run a clinic and they would have to come and see the doctor once a month because obviously there was other issues around being homeless and things like that. And he would then prescribe, because it's on a blue prescription, a regulated prescription, methadone, which they would have to take it. It was a supervised consumption. They would have to take it at the chemist. They weren't allowed to take it away.
Right.
They had to drink it there in front of the pharmacy. Everybody's probably seen these little cubicles in pharmacies. People think that's for the pharmacists to talk to you. It's not. They were actually funded by the government for people to take their methadone.
Yes.
So, but if you miss a week, that means your tolerance is different.
Right.
So you'd have to come back. So he couldn't prescribe to you. He couldn't continue prescribing to someone that didn't present because he'd have to see them. Because the majority of the time, people that are street homeless or anything and still in that chaotic lifestyle, they're still using Class A's. It just means the methadone is their first bag. It means they don't have to work so hard in the morning.
Yeah,
the methadone will help them function through their first bag.
So does that get every day they get the methadone?
Yes.
Yes.
So then they have to then work really hard at coming off script, so then they can take the drug away, but they still have to go every second day to pick it up, and then that continues. But that's a trust thing. Sure. That's where the doctor feels that he can trust his client to do this, because there's a big black market in methadone.
Oh, absolutely.
Massive market. So that, we have to know that, because they're tested every time that someone used to come into clinic, they're tested.
Right.
And the doctor sees the test. So he would then say, well, you haven't been taking it because it's not flagging.
You'd be selling it on.
You'd be selling it, so off you come. Yeah. So it's that fine line of balance of giving somebody enough trust so they feel a bit more confident about themselves, but not being an idiot.
Yeah.
That they think they can come in,
that
they're coming in and getting one over on us.
Yeah.
Like his biggest thing, if I say this, he's going to know it, his biggest thing is when somebody would come in and say, I get paid on such a day, and he'd go mad. He'd say, you don't get paid, you get benefits.
Exactly, you get benefits, yeah.
And then he'd go into the whole, I'm sitting here to pay for you to get benefits. Yeah. So he'd go into that whole speech.
Very true.
Because it used to infuriate him that they would make that comment.
Yeah.
So it's about the trust, it's about them coming back, and it's working with them. So I would get them from street level, I'd get them stable on a prescription, whether it be methadone, Subutex or whatever. We try and do some holistic work with them, acupuncture, attending AA, NA, whichever one they felt needed their needs, and try to get them accommodation. But the problem is, you can't, just because you give someone a different front door key doesn't mean they're fixed.
No, absolutely, yeah.
We have to work on the reasons why they're addicted. And until the government sees that and puts the money into that, this will roll on.
What do you think, from your perspective, from the people you saw, what do you think the main reason was for the addiction of most people? Of most people, obviously we're just generalising.
Yeah, some people, it's trauma in their life.
Yeah.
Some people, it's learned behaviour from their parents. We're in second, third generation addiction now.
Yeah.
It's they learn from their parents. Some people, as I said, like taking drugs. There's some people that have had something happen to them through their life and they're self-medicating.
So the pain for that.
Yeah.
Whatever.
There's some people with mental health issues that are self-medicating because the mental health system now is so poor that they're just bouncing
the
off the
drug
walls.
is helping them.
So a schizophrenic could take heroin just to calm down,
Yes.
just to stop the voices.
Yes.
Because he can't get any. I've got a client and he's a schizophrenic, paranoid schizophrenic, and he used to take he says just to stop the voices.
Yeah.
Because he was violent.
Right.
But he was violent because he had all these voices in his head telling him to be violent.
Yeah.
And he he's a big bloke, and then go into the hospital, and then you're getting no verbal, zero policy verbal. But instead of saying to him, mate, you've got to work with us, we'll get you there, but it's going to take a while, they just not get rid of him, kick him out. So you've got this paranoid schizophrenic walking the streets that if you looked at him the wrong way, it doesn't end well. It's bad when the security guard at the hospital is ringing me at 2:00 in the morning to go and get him because they can't handle him.
Yeah.
And they're asking me to come up to the hospital to come and get him.
Yeah.
Because they're not, and I said, but this is your job. Yeah, but we don't know what to do.
Yeah. You see, it's an interesting one, isn't it? By the way, the time is flying by. We haven't even touched on
this is
anything.
it. I mean, it's
So we're going to have you back in the future. Now, it's a problem. I mean, look, we are bite-sized, so you can just listen to us as you're commuting to work, driving in the car, hell, doing your gymnastics in the morning. So we do have a small time frame, but the experts which I have on the show, unfortunately, have so much detail, so much information, that if we don't bring them back, we miss out on so much. So we will work on bringing Jill back at some stage. But this is so interesting. So, right.
I think the biggest thing, if you're saying to me, what's the start of addiction? Education.
Right.
Education education from a young age. Right. And I mean children. I know it sounds, people are scared to talk about drugs with their children, but it's like everything, if you don't warn your children and they understand what drugs can do, it's not about what they see on the TV. I remember when the bill was on the TV and they had the healthiest looking heroin addicts I've ever seen in my life. Yeah. But it's not that. I remember when my son was, I think he was 8 or 9, and my husband dropped him off where I used to work, and we were going into town to buy him a coat for school, and I was running a bit late, and he sat in the room, and one of the lads that was there, he was a rampant heroin user, really nice lad, but absolutely entrenched. I asked him, I said, mate, can you sit down and explain to my boy? And he said, yeah. And they sat for 2 hours. Now, to this day, my son is 29 and he remembers that conversation.
Yeah.
Because that man went through everything.
Yeah.
He showed him his track lines, abscesses. He explained everything to him. He explained what it's like. Everything. Any question my son asked, he answered. He's very articulate. And he just told him everything. And to this day, my son will say to you, I remember that. And that, all this stuff they do in school is rubbish. It's rubbish. I've seen it. I remember when my son brought home the stuff that they'd had in, at the time it was social studies, I don't even know what it's called now. And I was just like, what is this? It's rubbish. It's rubbish.
Because it's watered down?
It's watered down and it's not truthful.
Weak.
The only person to ask about addiction is an addict.
Yeah.
But parents get so scared that they don't want their children near an addict or a former addict.
I think what we've done is we have kind of, in the United Kingdom, I can talk about, we've kind of we've looked at drugs as a bête noire in the older age groups, or my age group, whatever. Drugs, yeah.
But they've made them the forbidden fruit.
Correct, and the habit that they have with drink, say, with alcohol, we've normalised.
But
right?
I don't think we have. I mean, it's like, do you remember years ago, about 10 years ago, they were thinking about bringing the drunk tanks in?
Yes.
And they should have done that.
Of course they should have done.
They should have done that simply for the fact that I think it's absolutely outrageous that the police and the National Health Service have to deal with idiots that go out and get so drunk that they can't even stand up.
Correct.
The drunk tanks should have been brought in, and those people should have been made then to pay for the pleasure of staying in them, because there should be doctors there and there should be police, but there has to be a separate entity, and people need to know that this behaviour is not acceptable. And when I go out myself, I mean, I don't drink myself, but when I go out and see people falling down, and I've picked up many a dribble out on in my lifetime, and that to me is outrageous. We can't control the situation with the alcohol in the UK because we allow it. The pubs continue to sell it to them, and we allow it, and it's not fair on the police, the NHS, and any of the system. The paramedics especially get so much abuse. It's outrageous.
But you see, the reason why I say normalise it, because the police are drinking, the paramedics are drinking, and drink is such a... And yes, there's levels of drink, but because they see it as a normal addiction, yeah, because it isn't an addiction, because we're just having a drink.
Because it's legal.
Because it's legal. Then they're saying that the drugs are the problem. And, you'd hear that in the police all the time. You say, acquisition crime, it's all drugs. Well, there's enough people doing acquisition crime for alcohol.
Yeah, well...
Never mind just for drugs. So you get that problem. But the other side of that is, if you try and make it illegal, as it is in the United States, you bring with it a whole load of problems.
But again,
because it's already been invented.
I don't think it's about making it legal, or it's about education. It's about educating people and meeting people in that situation, because there's nothing more to promote education than the person that's within that life. So if you bring an alcoholic into a classroom and you speak to these kids, they can ask the questions because they know what they're hearing is the truth.
Yes.
And that's what it is. We make it into some forbidden fruit. So what happens is, when kids reach an age of, say, 13 to 14, they start double-doubling. And then we get into the whole, is cannabis a gateway drug? Personally, I don't think it is.
No, sure.
But others do. There's some people that I know that have smoked cannabis all their life, but they've never touched another drug.
Correct. Yeah, correct.
And they've smoked it for self-medication. They don't take any pharmaceutical medication. They just smoke, and that's it. So it's that balance. But it's information. If you don't have the information, there's one thing making an informed choice, and there's another thing making it an informed choice.
That's the point you're saying. Because you mentioned something, pharmaceuticals. Now, if you look at fentanyl example.
Oh. And oxycodone. Yeah.
All the problems that they're causing way
massively.
Killing people like flies in the United States.
Yeah.
Like flies.
Yeah.
Literally. And when I remember seeing one guy who they were talking to, and he said, we got this oxy here mixed with fentanyl that they were using. He said, it's killing people. So, he said, brilliant. Right. And I stopped for a while. He said, brilliant. So this fella, what's he saying brilliant about? He's a fly on the wall thing, it's quite interesting. He said, what you don't understand, if you're not in the drugs game, I want that thing that nearly makes me die.
Oh, yeah.
Because that's the highest high you're ever going to get.
That dealer will be sold out within an hour.
That's what he said. We're all going to go to this fella.
That dealer, if they know of a death...
If they can make that nearly kills you, or kills somebody else, but you've got resistance, your high is way higher than anybody else.
Yeah.
And it takes that mentality, that understanding to understand that. But if you don't ever talk to them, how are you going to understand that?
If someone dies from a dose, if someone dies from a bag of heroin, that dealer, you can guarantee, will be sold out in half an hour.
You've seen that? You've seen that?
Oh, yeah.
All the time?
Definitely. He'll be rinsed in half an hour, gone. He is sorted for that for next week, because that is done. He's bought his new DFS suite, he's sorted.
It's incredible, isn't it?
That happens all the time. I mean, we were lucky in the UK because meth never really took off.
No.
Meth tends to... America tends to be more stimulant.
Yes.
So it was cocaine, crack, and the meth and ice. They tend to like more stimulants. So when the oxycodone thing came in, OxyContin and all and a fentanyl, that really freaked them out because they'd never had that before. So heroin is relatively new in the United States, whereas people took it but it wasn't as big. Whereas in England it tends to be more of a depressant than the heroin. The meth never really took off, the ice never really took off, the crack did, but still the heroin is the dominant.
Some of these the new drugs which are
synthetics.
Yeah. What?
They're scary.
Absolutely. What's been done
nothing,
to deal?
Nothing. It's so hard and it's sad really because the people that invent these drugs are so educated.
Absolutely.
There's the guy in Amsterdam, and I can't think of.
Yeah, I know you mean.
Do you know what I mean?
I mean.
This man has. He could put his life to such a better use than what he does because he would make MDMA. He was the man that made MDMA. But all he has to do is change one component and then it's legal again.
Yeah.
So we had all these spice, I mean, I think one of the most scariest things I had was when I was working, I was in a place, a homeless drop-in, and I was talking to a worker. We were just chatting, there was people having cups of coffee and everything, and 5 people came in. And they came in together, and then they sort of separated off. And the next thing they just dropped. All of them
fell down. Yeah.
The spice.
Yes.
And these were all entrenched drug users.
So they wanted it.
They were all entrenched drug users. They had a high tolerance, but my God, whatever they had that day, not done bandy. And we were just like, we didn't know which one to go to. It was like, what do you do?
Yeah, what do you do?
Exactly.
And what did you do?
Well, we've done what we can, but because you don't know what you do. I'm not a chemist.
No, absolutely.
And all they have to do is change one dynamic of a compound, and that's legal again. And the government just can't keep up with it.
You see,
spice now is the biggest threat in prison.
Yes,
it used to be heroin.
By far, yeah.
And crack, and it's not now. Spice is the biggest monetary value in prison now.
So let me put a few to you because we're coming kind of towards the end. So let me look at crack in terms of UK. Let me look at this type of spice, the one that whereby you see people standing like statues.
Yeah.
You see it in Manchester. You see them.
Yeah.
They're like
just freeze up.
Frozen people.
Yeah.
So that type of let's say heroin and chasing the dragon, and let's say I'm just thinking, what would you come and normal cocaine, if you will, powder form cocaine. In the UK, where would you put most of these types of drugs? Where, in your knowledge, the hierarchies? Would you say that certain type of people go? For example, the politicians are going for the powder, and the crack
again, it's what the person wants. If they want a stimulant, so they'll do crack cocaine. They want that adrenaline. That's what they want.
And would you see that as the most dangerous? Because it keeps you going back? You say heroin's the most dangerous?
Yeah, as in, because heroin to me is the most dangerous, because obviously cocaine and crack is a stimulant.
Yes.
But heroin, your body becomes dependent. Your body doesn't actually become dependent on crack and cocaine.
It seems very, very...
It becomes psychologically dependent, but the body doesn't become dependent.
Right, physiologically it doesn't become dependent. Yeah.
So your body becomes physically dependent on heroin.
Right.
So you probably heard heroin say the cold, they don't want to do the rattle. They don't want to do the rattle. Yeah. They'll say, I can't rattle, can't do it. I'm rattling, can't do it. So it's heroin to me, because heroin's a depressant. So what happens is you take the heroin, and depending on what's in it, if it's fentanyl or whatever it's mixed with, because you got to remember, you're not taking pure heroin. You're taking a bit of rat poison, a bit of brick dust, a bit of corn flour, a bit, it's like Jamie Oliver stood in the kitchen and just poured everything in. Oh, that's all right. Yeah. And what then they'll do is they'll send a few bags out to somebody, and then a couple of complimentary bags that go out to see if anyone drops. If anyone dies, that's what they do. They'll send a bag out, so see if anyone drops. If they overdose, it was a bit strong, so we'll just whack it down a bit, and then but heroin to me is because it stops you breathing,
right?
Whereas cocaine and crack, you will you know, at some point your heart will probably explode if you really went into it. But heroin can stop your breathing, and that can happen on the first go, especially if it's mixed with fentanyl. Fentanyl is a very scary drug because you just don't know, and it literally can wipe you out in seconds. It will stop your breathing in seconds. So heroin, to me, physically, I think is the worst because it can just bang.
And then these people standing like statues and...
Spice, what happens with the spice, obviously, because it messes with the motor neuron, so they literally lose the ability to function. They freeze in time. And that's when you see them, they start bending over and they can't stand up, they can't, and they go in slow motion. If you watch them, they don't just drop to the floor, it's like a real slow motion sort of thing, because it's their world has just literally stopped. It goes literally in slow motion. So they think they're falling to the floor, but they're actually not. But we don't know about Spice. I mean, Spice was coming, when I left in 2015, Spice was really coming in hard then, and we just didn't know how to deal with it because the government weren't giving us the help to do the research on it. So we didn't know what to do with people that were taking it. Whereas, you know, we can work with heroin addicts, we can provide, but that's what another misconception is. Heroin and cocaine, heroin is the only drug that you can take medication for. Every other drug, no.
All right. Okay. So what are you doing then for it?
Nothing. It's all psychological.
You're just psychologically trying to get them off it, but you're not giving them anything to do with it. So if you do give them something, you're actually addicting them to something else. The
methadone,
Yeah.
Methadone is a good tool. Don't get me wrong. It's a good tool, but I know people that have been on methadone for 25 years. So we're literally giving them
the daily fix.
Instead of giving them heroin, we're giving them methadone. It's still, but we're not dealing with the issue. We're not helping them to find out why they become addicted and the tools to become unaddicted. You know, unless we give them that help, it's never going to change. Just because we give them methadone, that doesn't mean they're fixed. It just means we're just replacing one for another. And a lot of the times they'll have a payday hit. So when the benefits come in, they'll go out and score and take the heroin.
You see, it's interesting because right in the beginning of the Afghan war for us, so that's basically after the Twin Towers and the American and our special forces went in, when you went there to Afghanistan, basically there were not that many drug takers, because what the Taliban had done is they basically were executing people for taking it and preventing it being taken. Previously, before the Taliban, it had been utilised for export. Yes, because there's money in it for export. Right? So they export. When the Taliban came in line with the religious perspective, taking of
their perceived religious perspective.
For the actual Taliban.
But it was okay to send it to different countries for them to use.
But not in the beginning. For that actual religious perspective, they weren't growing the poppy, right? What happened was, as soon as the war took place again, that's how you make your money. So it came to bloom again, and everybody's making money out of poppy. Right? So then it can go anywhere because they don't care. And of course, they then realise that it's undermining the West. Right? So that's positive. So it's now positive again. Right? So that's what it's running. So then you started seeing there in Kabul, wherever else, a whole load of addicts. So the question is, don't get me wrong, there are obviously still addicts from even when the Taliban was there. But the question is, what level of repression do you require to stop somebody taking once you're already taking it? And the reason why I'm asking you that is, you look at somebody like, what's the Rolling Stones guy called, who must have been he must have been taking drugs for... But
he likes taking drugs.
Yeah, he loves it. How long has he been doing that for?
Well, he's 80, isn't he? Not far off 80.
And this guy seems to still be
the thing is, the guy that was the cleanest, Charlie Watts, has just died, and the other three are still going.
Exactly. So the question is, how damaging is it? Because I'm going to obviously go come down. How damaging is it for you?
Oh, catastrophic.
But these guys are still living.
but it,
and seemingly okay.
I mean,
or are they getting proper? I don't know.
No, but but look at their life. So you're comparing Keith Moon from the Rolling Stones, the multi-millionaire Keith Moon from the Rolling Stones, to a guy on the street.
I'm just trying to get perspective.
So this Keith Moon will get a better grade of heroin.
Correct.
It won't be as screwed up as the so he's probably, the percentage of heroin he's getting is probably better than the guy on the street, because a lot of the time the stuff on the street is what's killing them. It's not the actual heroin bit, it's the stuff they put in it.
Yes, absolutely, to make more money,
To stretch it out. So but then you get into, he's injected, so he gets clean kit, he gets, he won't get an abscess, he won't get sepsis, he won't get an infection, he'll get cleaner drugs. His drugs are, so you're looking, again, money talks. Sure. What he's getting is the polar opposite to what the homeless man's getting, because he's living, I've seen them take, we go out and we used to give out cookers and everything to cook, because I'd see them pulling water from puddles. Out of the, off the floor.
Yeah, I know what you're saying.
Dirty kit, dirty needles. In America, I was watching a program and I seen some of the kits they were using, the needles, and they were so blunt they wouldn't have even gone in anything, and they were still using them because the Americans are not very proactive with management. It's like, how do you feel about shooting galleries?
Well, look, I think it's a good idea. I think what they've done in Portugal is a good idea. I believe that it's cut down the numbers of people taking all the time, because of course they're getting information all the time when they're there, and so on and so forth. So for me, I think that type of intervention, one of a better word, is very, very good. The problem is that, this is where we come back to my field, politically in Britain it's unacceptable, because they feel that someone will turn around and say next time, oh, and you know what this party were doing? They're helping people take drugs. Yeah, and that's all you need to say in the UK. And next minute, you're not voted in. But
they don't see it as the bigger picture, that there's somewhere that somebody can go to get their drugs tested to make sure they're clean.
It is what it says it is on the box. Yeah,
they're injecting properly, so they're not a drain on the NHS. I've seen some horrific sights from bad injecting. Absolutely horrific.
And they're injecting anywhere, aren't they? Injecting
eyes, you name it.
In their eyes,
penis. You see, they'll go into the corner of their eye there. They've got nothing left. Into their neck, into their jugular vein. Into their groin, penis. You name it, anywhere, because they've got nothing left. They've got no vein left. So that's the other thing as well. In the shooting gallery, somebody will teach them, if they're so into injecting, they will be taught properly how to do it, because so many people, addicts, don't know how to inject properly, and that's why everything collapses and they get abscesses, they get infections, which is then a massive drain on the NHS.
Yes.
So it's all about education, but once you start giving people an education, they make an informed choice. So what happens is they start engaging with the workers that are in the shooting galleries, and then they decide, well, actually, this ain't so great, so we might not stop doing it, and we'll move over. And then they get in touch with they're put in touch with counsellors, and their road to recovery then is opened up. But in England, the road to recovery is like 2 steps forward, and that's your lot. There is no road to recovery. You have to be a very strong personality to become a recovered addict in England.
Interesting.
Your willpower has to be immense, and I know of one.
And
in all my years,
that, listeners, is where we're going to have to leave it for today, because I couldn't stop. I couldn't stop at the permitted level where we should stop, because it was so interesting. But unfortunately, we're going to have to. As you know, we're going to have Jill back. We've got to, because this is an immense subject. We haven't touched on a massive of information and things that we could do to look much, much closer at this issue, and how I think one of the main issues that blights our society today, how we can deal with that issue. So thank you very much, and Jill, thank you.
You're welcome.
And we will see you again next week.
If you'd like to help Carlton keep producing the Black Spy podcast and receive episodes and information that's only available to Carlton's special Patreon agents, then you can donate as little as £3, €4 or $5 a month by signing up with Patreon. See the Black Spy podcast notes or Google Patreon Black Spy Podcast and pledge your monthly amount. You can even win the opportunity to be a guest on the show. Thanks for listening, and don't forget to subscribe for free.
Here is a working class spy telling his stories, the secrets, the lives of spies. Feel free to message Carlton King on all socials and give this show 5 stars on Apple iTunes and subscribe so you never miss a single episode. For your ears only.
In the quarter of a century, I was a member of Her Majesty's Secret Intelligence Service.